Hello again. I'm Chris McDonald with McDonald Consulting Group, an authorized licensee of Sandler Training. And I'm excited about our first panel discussion, Details on the Road to Transition. To get us kicked off, I'd like to introduce our panel members. Charles, let's start with you.
Thank you. My name is Charlie Maskell. I'm with Chesapeake Corporate Advisors in Baltimore. We are an investment bank and a corporate advisory firm serving primarily the middle market in the Mid-Atlantic region. We do both sell side, buy side. We do valuations. We do pre-sale planning for companies as well.
Good morning. I am John Morgan. I'm a partner with Verdance Capital Advisors. We are a planning-centric registered investment advisory firm based in Hunt Valley. We also have offices in Alexandria, Virginia, and in Los Angeles. And our clientele principally are business owners, professional athletes, coaches, and entertainers.
Hello, my name is George Nemphos. I'm the managing partner of Memphis Braue, a boutique corporate and business law firm in the Maryland area, serving clients throughout the world in a variety of industries, but specifically the middle market. We work with entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, private equity managers, as well as independent sponsors. And we're excited to be here today.
Thank you all very, very much. Now, stating the obvious, I don't think that any business owner at the beginning of this year had on their plans worked through a major pandemic. Fair statement?
Very fair.
So as you think about that, and for the three of you to reflect, as it stands right now, and what you've seen throughout the year, what are some of the key drivers behind the plain activity and behaviors that you've seen with your clients this year, and just business owners in general? Charles, you want to start with that?
Sure. I would say that as we looked out over this year, the drivers for our clients have been to survive first, right? Survival. But it was interesting how quickly survival became a reality. Yeah. So most, if not all of our clients found a way to that. And then survival became success. And so many of our clients are realizing significant success right now. Now, the clients that were in the market to get liquidity, to sell themselves, all went to pause for a period of time. But since about mid-May, we've been back and the market has become very active. My opinion is that the market understands we're dealing with a healthcare crisis, not a business crisis. And private equity remains very active. They are looking longer term. What are the impacts, what are the potential impacts of COVID on the business? But if they can see their way through that, they're acting like we're in sort of a normal environment.
Oh, that's good to know. Mm-hmm. Makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Thanks, Charles. John, how about you?
Yeah, I think the businesses are sort of divided into two camps. Those in the service industry with some sort of recurring revenue that they've held up pretty well throughout this, and then others that are very dependent upon walk-in traffic, whether it's food service, retail. Many of them have taken advantage of PPP. But the question is there a second recurrence? Is there a second shutdown? Do they ever get back to the revenue level that they were pre-January of 2020? And I think that remains to be seen, because as of now, I think many are struggling to stay afloat. But to Charlie's comment, I think those seeking sales and those seeking purchases are, they're still very active out there. And we'll get to this later, I know, in the conversation, but valuations have held up pretty well.
Thank you. Good to know. George.
Not to be a parrot, but I'd echo my fellow panelists. I would add, however, that I think it was almost like the 7 stages of grief. We have clients in a variety of industries, everything from, food service, where they're actually manufacturing a product and dealing with logistics of shipping, stocking the supermarkets, to industrial services. They're on site. They have hundreds of people on site at oil refineries, pipelines. And the manner in which they handled it during this time period was very different, because the challenges that they faced were very different. The cloud, the fog of the pandemic stretched over the entire country's economy. And there was panic at first, well, denial, then a little panic, then survival mode. And then I would even throw in who are their friends? I mean, I've had many conversations with clients that would say, you know, I've talked to this supplier or I've talked to this customer, and we are in communication, making sure that we are paying each other, that we are providing the services. We are actively working together to get through this. But there was a whole subset of hoard cash, bubble, 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 get the PPP loan, bubble, bubble, bubble. And I actually think those businesses in the long run are going to find it very difficult to get back into the swing of the economy when things loosen up. You know, I would agree with Charlie that, you know, we were working on several transactions and we saw a pause and then they restarted. And I know we're going to get into this at some point today, but then it was interesting to see how that pause and the reaction to the pandemic affected, you know, the structure and the manner in which things would actually move forward. So I think, you know, it's as an economy, we reacted. I think then underneath that, it's what happened in each industry. You know, restaurants, we all know what happened in restaurants, but accounting firms are still very busy. You know, financial planners and money managers and wealth advisors and valuation experts, very busy. You know, and investment bankers are very busy, and corporate advisors, even more so now than ever. So I think we did this, we're coming up, and time will tell if we have a second shutdown that throws it all out of whack again.
Yeah, without a doubt. And all of you have mentioned, you know, the PPP funds and what's happening with that and businesses hunkering down. A lot of our clients, we've had conversations around just flat out Darwinism. Survival of the fittest, right? And very appropriate word. And I'm curious what your opinions are around business owners that have just really just gone into the trenches, like in that March timeframe. And as a business owner myself, it was easy to go right into the trenches right away,
Yes,
right? And when you're in the trenches, it's hard to see above those trenches as far as what's going to happen. And to your point, George, if you're so hunkered down, are you missing out on what's happening outside of you? Any advice for business owners that are so in the trenches to find a way to get out of those trenches?
Yes, you know, I think, and George referenced it, was really to communicate with their vendor base, their customer base, their employee base, and also sort of do a little bit of a competitive view and say, because I have not seen a sector other than restaurants and hospitality that are obviously just down, that are sort of down across the board. Almost every sector has some promise in it in some way other than those immediately affected. So I think that communication, that interaction, as George referenced, would be very helpful to them. Certainly talk to your advisors. That's always helpful because someone like George, you know, 30, 40 clients, you know, he made contact in a month or two, and that's very helpful to draw from that perspective. And the last thing I would say is take a long-term view.
Yeah.
You know, you have to have a perspective that you are going to be around in 2 or 3 years. You're not going away, and sort of behave like that. So what do you have to do to make that the reality?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the long-term view is a very sage advice because we're kind of in this square root recovery now. We haven't quite got the V bounce back, but we've got a nice bounce back, and it's sort of leveled off with slowly improving. There are businesses we know that aren't going to make it back, but there are opportunities, I think, for some of them to combine forces, to scale up. You know, yeah, again, talk with your banks, with mortgage forbearance. I think people are rolling up their sleeves, trying to keep everybody together, everybody in business. Unfortunately, there will be some losers, but out of that, I think through the Darwinism comment, there's going to be opportunities for companies to get stronger and grow.
Without a doubt. I'm sure we'll be talking about that very shortly. George?
I've talked to my clients frequently about the concept of economic herd immunity. Basically, your only way everybody's going to get through this is communication, working together, and finding a way in which really to protect each other. Economic herd immunity. You know, Darwinism is always out there. The weak will drop off, but guess what? That's the economy outside the pandemic period of time. The pandemic just shines a bigger old flashlight on it, and it's going to expose some sort of weakness potentially in your business or in the industry that needs to be addressed. A way to combat that is economic herd immunity. Work together, find a path together, talk with your banks, talk with your advisors. People and businesses want actually to stay in business, and therefore are beginning or have begun to really recognize that the way in which to get through this in those situations is to be more open, talk about situations, figure out who is going to be your partner, in business, inside and out. We've seen a great example as we've seen in a situation where we have a food manufacturer who was having horrific logistic issue. You can imagine, right? During the period of time in which the pandemic started, the shutdown and they couldn't get anything anywhere. It was literally produce rotting on docks. The end users, in the industry got together and figured out a way to work together to form new logistics hubs temporarily to get the food into the supermarkets, to keep these other companies going. So it's a chain effect, and that's why I refer to it as herd immunity. We need to work together in all aspects. To my panelists' concept, there are going to be losers. It's just going to be that way. The likelihood is a good portion of them in the long term probably would have been losers in the long term. They probably really would have been. I think that with the right advisors, the right plan, keeping your head on a swivel and, understanding that you have to keep one foot in the trench, but you need to kind of look up out of the foxhole and start to figure out where the lay of the land is, you're going to succeed. You're going to make it through.
It's interesting you say that, and it's really, when you're in that foxholes, we're talking about the companies, and I can think of some of our clients that have a large distribution system through channel partners. And this has given them an opportunity to really bring their channel partners closer, bring their distributors closer together. Matter of fact, we just finished a 2-day virtual meeting, our first 2-day virtual meeting. Both days ended with a virtual happy hour, so that was nice. It's really focusing on bringing everyone together, and Charlie, as you mentioned, communication.
Yeah.
And understanding that we cannot not communicate. If there's silence, that's communicating pessimism or questions. So consistent huddles, daily huddles, is one of the things that we're seeing that's really, really helping. So with that said, what do the three of you see, given everything we're talking about? What types of opportunities have come about because of this pandemic? I mean, what can you speak to on that?
Well, the remote technology space has just been an enormous explosion. Stating the obvious, I realize, but this could be a change that we don't see go away. Whether it's remote learning for universities, or whether it's annual meetings that happen via Zoom.
Yep.
I think that people now realize there are other options aside from getting people together. And, maybe you don't have an annual meeting every year. Maybe you have one every other year, and on the off years you have a Zoom, just for efficiencies and for timing. So I think that technology is the big beneficiary of what we're seeing right now, the shutdown.
I think that the other, and it's somewhat related to those comments, is companies now understand that they can do business development, which is crucial, right? Business development, and not be at breakfast, lunch, or dinner. That they can communicate, hold a Zoom meeting, hold a Zoom happy hour, do a presentation, and we've gotten so good at it in a very short period of time. So the growth side of the business, people understand that, wow, this could really be powerful when we get back, and we can then press the flesh, but also have this other channel that we're driving business. So that I think is really important. The second one is, and it really gets to, unfortunately, we will have winners and we will have some losers, is for companies that have an interest in making acquisitions to get out ahead of it, and before some of these losers become true losers, to begin that communication and see if there's a way to enter into a transaction with perhaps a competitor or someone else that may expand their opportunity. But there are going to be sellers, distressed sellers, and there are already, and there are going to be more of them. I caution clients about buying distressed companies because it is a complex exercise. But at the same time, I think if you get out there early enough, put together a positive plan, and approach some of these distressed companies, there's going to be opportunity to grow through acquisition.
That's a good point.
With very low interest rates.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Picking up on what Charlie had said, I think there's two paths that are becoming really apparent, that if you're focused and you are a business that is somewhat nimble, able to adjust to the new technology and to the situation, you have the organic growth path as well as acquisitions. And I think what we're starting to see in our business and with our clients is that we have clients that are focused in both areas, even more so, but the clients that I feel that are pushing forward more quickly, more readily, are adopting new technology in order to further the organic growth, but also are utilizing it and taking the opportunity to dive into the M&A world, making acquisitions, backfilling issues that they have within their own product line or their own business. To your point, Charlie, I mean, if it's a distressed company, it's not just check the box. It's
exactly
figuring out what you're going to do with the assets, and then 4 months after doing the deal to incorporate those assets and make everybody understand that everything's okay. So I think that what we're going to see, and we are seeing, is the successful companies that pull through this will be much stronger, will have been somewhat more opportunistic, but also maintaining their hand on their base, and will have either organically grown or have made some really smart acquisitions to consolidate the marketplace.
What type of cautions in the wind, if you will, should companies have when it comes to being acquisitions that maybe shouldn't have happened? Are businesses looking at companies that are so far outside of their bailiwick, if you will? What should they be thinking about, and what kind of questions should they be asking themselves when it comes to acquisitions?
The beginning of the process, if you're going to dive into an acquisition path and you've never done it, you need a good lawyer, you need a good accountant, you need a good investment banker, corporate finance advisor, and frankly, you need a good wealth planner. You need it all, because these are very difficult times, and doing an M&A or a consolidation or we can call it whatever you want, it is not easy outside of a pandemic. And if you are a newbie to it, you really need a group of advisors to help you get the baseline experience to continue doing it. So we are seeing a lot of newbies dive into the M&A pool. Okay. Because of that, there's a lot of inexperience. They do ask a lot of the wrong questions. They ask a lot of right questions, but then they don't understand what to do with the answer at times. Also, I'll tell you right now, I mean, we were talking before we all got up here. We're also finding issues that are popping up, being, something that outside the pandemic, you'd look at and go, we'll get through it. Now it's, no. This is bad. We need to deal with this. And as a counsel, I look at it and go, okay, tell me what the business issue is. And a lot of times it's not a real business issue. It's something, everybody's heightened. Everybody's nerves are a little raw right now heading into this. The good news is that they're moving forward despite feeling a little bit raw. I think what you have to deal with from my standpoint, and I don't want to speak for anybody else here, but from a lawyer standpoint, to some degree it is still due diligence as it's always been. However, we start diving into things like, okay, you got a PPP loan. What did you use it for? That we got to dive into that.
Yeah.
Are your contracts solid? Again, the economic herd immunity. Who worked well with them and who didn't? Because that's going to affect what you're buying in the future. I mean, we're not even talking about valuation issues these days. We're talking about, what do I need to know about this business? And as a corporate attorney, And a business advisor from that standpoint, it's popping the hood, getting underneath and into the engine, and where we probably would have taken it for 1 or 2 test spins, today we're taking it to the racetrack. I'm bringing in 2 mechanics. We're picking apart the engine, and I'm even, bringing in a UV light and going all over the interior to make sure there's no blood splatterings. But I mean, it's really just that gotten that way. I think you guys would agree.
If it's no longer organic growth that they can achieve, they have to be creative. Whether it's buying something that's scalable or buying a new vertical source of revenue. And I think that was the point that you were alluding to, Chris. Can you get outside your lane? And,
Right.
We've seen companies as big as Hewlett-Packard and IBM try that and fail miserably. The middle market companies that we're working with, it's even more important to understand if you're buying something that is not your specialty, do you have the staff that this can be additive to EBITDA? And I'm sure, that's something that Charlie is very active advising clients on.
Oh, sure.
We challenge around first, what is the strategic motivation for making the acquisition?
Okay.
Because acquisitions can get very sexy. They're exciting. We're going to acquire someone. We're going to be another 50% bigger. But really, what is the strategic fit? You're headed somewhere with your business. Growth is a component of that in almost all cases. How is it going to be accretive to that? Or are we making a complete right turn? And where is that going to take us? That's a really important conversation. That conversation is not just with the CEO, that's with the executive team, because it needs a marketing influence. It needs a finance influence. It needs a technology influence. So we really think that's an important conversation that doesn't happen in an hour, okay? And needs to be supported by some data.
Yeah.
The second thing we ask companies to really focus on early on is integration. George and I can get the deal together, 5 times this, 80% down, all of those things. But how are you going to integrate this business? Because you can overpay for a business, but if you integrate really well, it can be an outstanding deal. Okay. Integration is crucial, but you can't begin integration the day of closing. You have to begin integration 90 days before. And then the last I'll say, and we're seeing this more and more and more, is someone needs to do cultural due diligence. We don't do that. We're finance people, but you need to do cultural due diligence. Go in, spend time with people, understanding your culture, their culture. How are they going to come together? Are there problems? Again, this is not after closing. This is before closing. And that allows for successful integration. But it's overlooked so often.
That's a great point. And we see that so often in our world. And with regard to culture, is the culture of that acquiring company, what's their vision? What are their core values?
Yeah,
Do they have
absolutely.
core values? And we've all seen it go very well and not so well when you think about that. And when it comes to the people and the human capital, one of the things that we're seeing is much more attention these days on succession planning, on really making sure that there's a career path for our team members. Whether or not we're going to be on the path of growth and acquiring or going to be acquired, we want to make sure that we have a career path. We want to make sure that our team members know where they're going to be able to go and be successful inside the organization. It doesn't always have to be an upward movement. It could be lateral. It could be different types of movement in the company. And we see that as a huge opportunity. When it comes to just business structure, business ownership, has that changed at all this year? And if so, what way?
There's generally 3-4 structures that everybody, puts up on the board and says, partnership, corporation, LLC, some hybrid thing, joint venture. And everybody kind of looks across the board and says, well, where do we want to fit? Where do we want to be? Then they look at the tax situation, and you kind of go through all the steps, and that's not going to change. And it's not changing during this time period. What gets more complicated during this time period is succession planning issues and how you build that into the structure. If there's an acquisition and you're going through, we're pretty good culturally, but we don't quite match up. Well, that complicates the structure because you have a reporting hierarchy. Maybe you've got to have it more of a divisional, maybe you're dropping down a sub. I mean, those items, things outside your lane, we're going off and we're going to go outside our box and we're going to go acquire this. Well, if you're going to acquire something outside your box, The likelihood is you don't want anything in that box touching your current box, other than maybe your C-suite people, because inevitably there is a culture clash because you're outside our lane and we're very different. So you got an issue right from the get-go. And it does travel and it does track culture when you go outside your lane. I would probably say that structurally, there's more attention to the underlying concepts of management. How do we get out of this? What are our rights during the process? So I think there's much more negotiations around figuring out how we want to integrate and how we want to play together. A corporation looks like a corporation. A partnership looks like a partnership, and an LLC can look like a partnership or a corporation depending upon what you want to do with it. But the underlying aspects of each of those types of entity and the type of deal structure you're running into really is becoming more and more a focus of where are we going? How are we going to get there? What is that supposed to look like? And who on the team is going to be a player in that path going forward? That's where the documents today, because of everything we've gone through, are becoming a little more complex. If you're in a distressed sales situation and there's some key management, that management likely is burned out, beaten up, and just tired. So they need the transaction to go. So there's a lot more detail put forth within the structure on how do you bring that management along? How do you reward that management for coming into the fold and help them get through the fray of a company or an entity of some sort that started going down and became very distressed. Flip side is you're seeing, I don't know about you all, but we're starting to see mergers of what they're calling equals, where they see the opportunity, they realize that they need to do something, both companies need to do something to move the ball forward on the other side of all this. And mergers of equals or damn close to being equals results in some real complex stuff behind the scenes. And we've seen some of that in the news. We hear about banks merging where so-and-so is going to be the CEO for the first 2 years. And then the CEO of the old company will be the CEO of the next 2 years, and they're going to flip-flop. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that goes on. So the complexity revolves around relationships and where you want to go. As much as we lawyers love to think we're the most creative people on the earth.
Oh, you're not?
Well, hey, I am. No, there are certain things that everybody's used to, right? And there's certain structures. So it's all about what goes on behind the scenes that needs to find its way. And people like Charlie get in there and they're the first ones to sniff it out. I mean, normally lawyers aren't. And then, you guys sniff it out because you know what the goals are of the individual selling the company. So it kind of starts to roll up, and then it hits me and lands on my plate. And I'm begging these guys to tell me, what's going on.
One of the things that we're seeing that's really interesting and is fun to do, and actually George and I are working on one now that has stalled. The client has stalled with good reason. And it has something to do with the organization, but is how to share value with key employees, right? Do we bring them in as a shareholder? Are they going to be an owner in the company? Are they going to be a partner of ours in some maybe complicated way? Or are they going to have a profits interest? And we have all these really neat opportunities to help companies think through how to do that. But sure, when they're thinking about what should our entity selection should be, we're also asking the questions about, well, how is ownership continuity and value sharing? It's different. Ownership is actual ownership. Value sharing is sharing in the value as the value of the company increases, which doesn't have to be as an owner. So different entities support those different structures better. So we're making sure we're asking those questions early on, and to make sure they can accomplish what they want longer term. But it's a really quickly developing concept out in the privately held market is how to share value, many times without giving ownership.
Absolutely. A lot of different paths they can go on with that, and you can't ignore them. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's very important. You rarely, to George's point, see a merger of equals. Even if they call it a merger of equals, there's always going to be an alpha. And the question is, how do you structure something so there's not resentment of the management of the company that's being purchased?
And that resentment can cause issues that are unimaginable at the time.
But a higher net worth undoes a lot of resentment. So I think that, if it can be structured properly, everybody can come out a winner.
Absolutely. Well, as we wrap up this panel, just any closing thoughts from you from the standpoint of detours on the road to valuation or transition? Any other thoughts you have, Joe?
My main advice would be that the detours or obstacles have solutions. There's very few. Now, again, I won't keep referencing, but hospitality and restaurant, they're damaged in ways we can't quite understand how they're going to be repaired. But almost every other business, there is a solution to moving forward. You might have to get smaller before you get bigger. You might have to make the acquisition. You might have to share some equity with some key people. A lot of solutions for companies sort of to move through these times, preserve valuation, increase valuation while doing that. So I think be optimistic, be positive, and really look for that solution because they do exist in many, many cases.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the business owners in the C-suite have learned a lot. This was in March, we thought this was obviously going to be something, not that it's not severe, I don't want to diminish it, but the way we've come back so rapidly, I think that it shocked management into a lot of contingency planning. So when something like this happens again, at least they have a roadmap to follow to say, well, this is point A, let's begin right away.
Absolutely. Absolutely, John. And George?
I'll tell you, I think the most successful business owners, entrepreneurs, companies that will come through this will go a little, if we're going to use the road concept, they'll throw out the navigation, pull out the old school maps and figure it out. Take the time to chart your own path. All of our navigation systems, hey, would you like to detour? Bing, and then everybody goes the same way. The people are going to win. The people are going to be around. The companies that are going to be successful and continue to be able to do the things that they do are going to be the companies that pull out the old school map, stop and talk to somebody and ask for directions, and take the time to chart their own path. And, I think in this horrific period that we're all going through, because it is horrific, it affects all of us at, not only a business level, but a personal level. If we take the time to chart our own path and utilize the fundamentals that we have in front of us and our advisors, we can make it through.
Yeah, that reminds me, as we close this out, many years ago, one of my mentors told me something that sticks with me to this day, and that is what you ignore becomes more. So you think about leaders today and senior leadership, and what are they ignoring? Are they ignoring critical conversations with their team? Are they ignoring critical conversations with their partners, such as all of you? So really addressing those things head on and having difficult conversations is really important. Thank you all very, very much for this panel discussion. It was excellent. And I'm very happy to announce our next panel. Kimberly Prescott is going to lead us down the new roads to valuation. Thank you.